everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is part 2 of the 2023 3-Point Plan Boot Camp, skills for us to take to the Hill for our visit. So this is really the exciting part that we're going to really dive in to the 3-Point Plan. We have a little more information, and hopefully at the end of this, we really hope that this will give you more insight on how to feel, what to expect, and the whole workings of the whole meeting when we go to our appointments. I'd like to start off by introducing 2 other people that will be speaking today. First, we have Irene Bueno, and she is a co-founder and partner of NVH LLC. She has a strong standing relationship with multicultural organizations and patient advocacy. Ms. Bueno has ongoing engagement with Congressional Black, Hispanic, and Asian Pacific Islander caucuses and engages in outreach with multicultural health organizations. She has served as Deputy Assistant Secretary at HHS and Special Assistant to President Clinton in the Domestic Policy Council and Chief of Staff's office, and has been recognized as top lobbyist by the National Institute of Lobbying and Ethics. A California native, Ms. Bueno earned a Juris Doctor degree from Hastings College of Law and a Bachelor of Arts from the University of California, Berkeley. She's a member of the California and District of Columbia bars. Fun fact about Irene: she is an accomplished Latin ballroom dancer, and she competes at national dance competitions. How fun is that? That's great, Irene. Also with us today is Jordan Fan, and Jordan is our Policy Committee ARIA staff liaison. And he has also helped us and authored and done tons and tons of research to help us formulate our 3-Point Plan. So thank you, Irene. Thank you, Jordan, for your participation this morning. Jordan, I'd like you to start off and take it away for us.
All right. Thank you, Joyce. So yeah, I'll be providing some of the kind of background and key points behind the 3-Point Plan. And so first of all, what we'd like to do, Jazz, if you could put on the 3-Point Plan on your screen, we will show everyone what this year's 3-Point Plan looks like. Here's our wonderful cover page. You can feel free to look at it and enjoy it at your own convenience, but Jazz will move on to point 1. Next page, thank you. All right, so for our first point, now typically each year for the 3-Point Plan, we choose 3 legislative policy points to get behind. Now, one of the kind of struggles this year is that this is a new Congress. So in formulating that, we weren't sure when things would be reintroduced or if they would be reintroduced. So that will play a part later, as you'll see in the 3-Point Plan, but just something to keep in mind. So for point 1, we will be talking about fair housing. Now, we wanted to build on one of our initiatives last year, which is why we are continuing our support for fair housing. Now, to provide some context for sort of the key points around this, affordability continues to be the most significant barrier to homeownership for all Americans, including AAPIs. And one of the points that a lot of our lawmakers aren't aware of is that even when the median income of AAPIs is higher than the national average, there is extremely high income inequality among this. So subgroups such as many Southeast Asians, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders are suffering from socioeconomic barriers. Furthermore, when you look at affordability, AAPIs live in the lowest affordability areas around the country. So it's not quite accurate to look at the national median income and say AAPIs don't have affordability issue, because they really do. Furthermore, Asians have also faced historic barriers to homeownership, such as redlining and racial covenants. For these reasons, ARIA, for the 2nd year in a row, is supporting legislation that is designated to address these multi-generational inequities in homeownership and narrow and ultimately close the racial homeownership gap. Last year, this was in the form of the Down Payment Toward Equity Act, or HR 4495. What this would do would be to establish a grant program to provide down payment assistance to underserved communities. This is something that did not make it out of the House last year, but we want to continue supporting this because, again, affordability continues to be an extremely major barrier to homeownership for many within the Asian American community. Next point, Jazz. For point 2, we have appraisal equity, the Real Estate Valuation Fairness and Improvement Act. So we have seen in the news for a long time that there have been anecdotes of families within minority communities having to change their family photos or have a white family to represent them and getting higher appraisals, as well as smaller scale studies. However, recently, with the release last October of the FHFA's Uniform Appraisal Dataset, there is now a large, consistent national sample size, and research groups like Brookings or Freddie Mac, or college professors from New Mexico and Illinois, have been able to do large-scale research, and the information has been pretty shocking. Unsurprisingly, they found that there were significant disparities between the appraised values of white homes compared to those within minority communities, including the Black, Latino, and many within the Asian American community. But however, what made this a more significant issue is they found that even when adjusting for relevant factors like access to parks, quality schools, socioeconomic status, crime rate, consumer demand, the disparity remained significant. And just to provide some numbers on how significant it was, white homes were appraised at twice the value of comparable Black homes and 3 times that of Southeast Asian and Pacific Islander homes. This gap has increased over the last 10 years, which suggests this is not just the downstream effect of past racial biases. This is an active and ongoing process that is continuing in the contemporary appraisal industry. They have done some speculation on what factors might be driving this. One of the main problems that they identified is that the appraisal process itself is sourced in comparable sales, which are themselves sourced in past historical biases. The Appraisal of Real Estate book that was written in 1924 pulled on popular eugenics and social Darwinism theories that suggested that land owned by indigenous people or Black and other communities of color was inherently less valuable than those within the white community. And that has had significant downstream effects that continues to affect the appraisal process today. For this reason, now that there is this strong empirical evidence, ARIA is supporting legislation to identify and eliminate racial appraisal bias disparity, such as the Real Estate Valuation and Fair Housing Act. The goal of this legislation would be to create an interagency task force consisting of representation of the 14 regulatory bodies in one form or another to preside over real estate lending practices, real estate valuation, and other purposes. They would be tasked with conducting studies and generating reports within the real estate appraisal industry. This is a crucial first step to get the federal government behind generating these large-scale reports to identify these issues. And it's something that I think a lot of our lawmakers won't be aware of. So when it comes to building value and building wealth within these minority communities, it is important to have appraisal equity. Last point, Jazz. And for our final point, advancing equity and justice and opportunity for AA and HPIs with Executive Order 14031. Now, this point centers around disaggregated data. ARIA has been a long champion of this. We have, major movements like the No Other campaign, More Than One. What we've stressed time and time again is that AA and HPIs are not a monolith. There are significant differences within this community in income, lifestyle, consumer demands, healthcare needs, religion, cultural practices, the list goes on. It's something that we have always wanted to rally behind, and that's why for this year, we are supporting the current administration's efforts to identify opportunities to increase equity, representation, and access for the AAPI community through this executive order. Some of the stated goals of this include the development, monitoring, and coordination of the executive branch efforts to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for AA and NHPI communities in the United States. By supporting this, we increase the prominence and prevalence of this discussion, especially within our local lawmakers, and really identify this as an important issue that these lawmakers will want to understand, especially if they want to connect with their AAPI constituents. So that's sort of an overview of our 3 policy points for this year. Hope, Joyce, or Irene, if any of you 3 would like to comment on that.
I can start, Irene and Joyce, if that's okay. Very well put together, Jordan. Thank you for providing us a comprehensive overview of this year's 3-point plan. Thank you to you and to Joyce and to Abby and to Jazz, and even to Vanessa and Irene and Owen for working on this document. Really well put together. Excited to present this when we see each other in a month, right? In about a month in DC. So, you know, for those of us who are going to be talking about this, right, with our congressional representatives, or if we have the opportunity to be part of our visits with our US senators or state senators, think about how you're going to talk about these 3-point plans into context of how you practice real estate. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to feel comfortable talking about this in a very conversational way. And now some of us might think very and articulate as technical as Jordan can, but some of us will have to kind of like actually reword this and paraphrase this in a way that we are, you know, we're conversing kind of like to a friend or to a family member. So be very comfortable in practicing this 3-point plan, right? So when it comes to appraisal issues, think about your clients or your own home, right? How does that impact? How does the value of your own home compare to the value of a neighborhood that's probably much more of a white neighborhood, right? If we're seeing appraisal inequity in neighborhoods that are predominantly white and much more diverse, then there's a problem with building generational wealth, right? And so we want to make sure that there is appraisal equity. And that's why we as an organization with other organizations support this whole appraisal reform and making sure that there is equity when it comes to valuing homes, whether it's in a predominantly white neighborhood or whatever it is, all things considered. This fair housing, you know, we find ourselves as a community again under attack. SB 147, I think a lot of us have heard, if not all of us have heard about this law in Texas that is being introduced that will not allow citizens of China, of Russia, Iran, and North Korea to own real estate here in the state of Texas. Now, that's going to be very harmful. And if there are other states that are following suit, then that is going to prevent our community from building generational wealth. And as Jordan had put so eloquently, right, we live in, typically Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders live in high-priced communities. So down payment is something that is a barrier we're finding in the last decade. So we do need to find ways to help our community when it comes to grants, down payment assistance, and what have you. And we're hopeful that this bill would be introduced in this new Congress. And finally, disaggregated data, right? We've been talking about disaggregated data and talking about how our community is not a monolith. And so we need to understand the complexities of working within our community. This year's State of Asia America report, I think all of us have seen it, right? It talks about the differences in home ownership within the subgroups. We know now that Vietnamese Americans are doing very well when it comes to home ownership. They are at about what, 71, 72%, Jordan? And we take a look at Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders that are within, the 40s, barely within the 50% homeownership rate. So if you take a look at just that data alone, right, within the AAPI context or category, there's disparity when it comes to homeownership. And so we need to understand what is going on and how we can service each of the group within, each of the subgroup within the AANHPI category. So disaggregated data is not just important when it comes to health, as Irene had worked on in the past and continues to work. It's not just important for educational purposes. It's not just important for labor and small business, but it's also important when it comes to economic housing and housing opportunities. So we all have about a month to sort of like really understand and live and breathe this 3-point plan. Thank goodness that we moved away from a 5-point plan to a 3-point plan now. But this is the conversations about our policy initiatives. It's not just when we go to DC, right? These conversations should find its way in conversations that you have with, with people within your sphere of network, because the more comfortable that you talk about it, the more comfortable you are when we get to DC. But at the same time, this is a way to articulate really what we do as an organization. At the end of the day, the mission of the organization, the mission of ARIA is to move the needle of homeownership. And this is how we move the needle of homeownership, right? When we take the barriers, the challenges that prevent our community members from being homeowners, then we are changing lives, right? That is our theme this year is ARIA, right? Changing lives through real estate. And so you are making a difference when you come to DC, when you talk about this, and hopefully, you help with taking away and taking down the barriers when it comes to challenges for homeownership. So great job, Jordan. So Joyce and Irene.
Thank you so much, Hope. That was a real good summary and add-on to the Jordan's presentation. I'd like to share some tips and ideas to help you when you do go to the Hill, be it your first time or second or more. We all kind of gather different things that are really helpful to us. So I wanted to kind of share a few things for you to kind of think about and have on the back burner. So to start with, I just wanted to share a little overview. First thing, when you are walking and getting closer to the door to enter, take a deep breath. And hopefully that'll help relax you, because we are nervous. We don't know what to expect. We know what we want to talk about, but we don't really know how the conversation is going. So if we can try to take a deep breath before we walk through that door, then sometimes that will help bring us down a little bit and help us with our conversation. The other thing that's kind of helpful is maybe to find out if in general, when they meet with small groups, are they a more formal type of person, or are they more informal? Informal meaning something like everyone's meeting at a coffee shop and you're sitting around a table and you're just kind of having a conversation. It is business. However, it's kind of a different atmosphere. So it can be a little, more informal. So I think if we can gather some information ahead of time to find out a little bit about the style, might still be a little formal though, because we are probably going to meet in their office. However, sometimes we can kind of set the tone too when we start our conversation. So that might be helpful too, to find out a little bit about their style when they meet with a group of people. Please remember, they really do have a tight calendar. We may only have maybe 10 minutes, especially if we're meeting with our member of Congress. You know, staff has a tight schedule too, but sometimes there may be a little more flexibility. But when we meet with our member of Congress, it's really going to be important for us to be real succinct and be mindful of the time, because we do want to make sure we get our message and they understand what is important to us this year specifically. Make sure you introduce yourselves and also a very, very brief info about ARIA. You know, who are we? What are our goals when we do go, and what is ARIA in general? So I think that's really important because that sets the tone. They can understand, and it's a good reminder. You know, they meet with so many different groups, and so this will kind of bring forward who ARIA is again, depending on how much engagement and how many bills that they have actually been in front of that have our type of issues. So please, you know, make sure to kind of introduce a little bit. Thank them in the beginning for their time. And then we want to again thank them at the end for taking time to meet with us. And then a nice little note afterwards. So that's kind of in a nutshell, just kind of how the flow will go. So to break that down a little bit, I'd like to just say a few words about how do you know how your lawmaker wants to hear. So sometimes what would be really helpful is to read up and learn a little bit about your specific congressperson and see what their passion is and see if there's a common thread with one of these 3-point plans, because then it's more relatable with us to them. For realtors, a really helpful tool is RPR. RPR has so much data, so much demographics, and this will kind of help us with our conversation so that we can guide the conversation accordingly to the demographics of their district. So please look at RPR, because that's going to help you with who the demographics are, because we can guess, but you know, there may be other ethnicities, so that we can make it a little bigger, and then they will, you know, have more information. So the RPR can really, really be helpful. And that's something that I take with me when I go to my state. I always take an RPR report with the demographics, and that's very helpful. So if you can, you know, put together that report and then give it to them. That's their reference, and they're going to love it. They will refer to that. How do you make points personal and relatable? Well, you know, we do want to talk about our experience and our client's experience. But the other thing that's really helpful is that typically people are ARIA members, you know, they're just not realtors. They're in the mortgage industry, insurance industry, other industries too. So each person, it would be really helpful if you specifically address the importance and view from your industry and how this will help your clients and share your views specific to your industry. And so that can be done in like one sentence, really quick, because again, remember, we are kind of in a time crunch, but at least then that gives everybody an opportunity to talk, and then they hear about different industries within ARIA. It's just not real estate. We have other industries too. So that would be really helpful. What do you find hardest about meeting with the lawmaker? Okay. First thing that comes to me is, what do I say if they ask a question about our 3-point plan and we don't really have a specific answer for them? Just like them, it's okay to say, you know, I don't really have that answer. I don't know, but I'll happy to get back to you. They do the same thing when they meet with other groups, and groups ask them questions. If they don't know, they also say, I don't really have that answer in front of me that I can think about, so I'll get back to you. So, it's okay. It's okay for us to say that. They won't think twice if we say that. So please don't feel that you have to find or think about an answer right away. It's okay to say, I'll get back to you, because that happens. And of course, again, try to stay relaxed. The last thing I just wanted to mention is, what is the best way to prepare? So the best way to prepare is to find out a little bit about your congressperson and a common thread that you may find with yourself and them. So that way you keep that in the top of your mind, and it may or may not weave in the conversation, but then it may, so that you at least know there is a little common thread with you and them. And sometimes that helps with the anxiety, because, we are really anxious. So that's kind of the best way I'm finding. And also, realtors and affiliates, please go to your association, your AOR, and ask who your GAD is, the Government Affairs Director. Ask who is the chair or vice chair of the PAC committee, the Political Affairs Committee, and ask who is a chair or vice chair of LCRC. That's a Local Government Relations Committee. We are all welcome to join these committees, because this is where we learn about local and state issues, and sometimes even federal issues. What's on the plate for our specific area? So these are great resources for you. They may have some insight on our 3-point plan that we're not even aware that's being talked about. So that can be the conversation when you meet with them. So those are kind of my tips that I have for everybody. I hope they're helpful. And I'd like to kind of end with our mission statement. AREAA is dedicated to promoting sustainable home ownership opportunities in Asian American communities by creating a powerful national voice for housing and real estate professionals that serve this dynamic market. So please think about starting with this, so that this kind of sets the tone of who we are, because this is our mission statement. Everyone has a mission statement, so it would be nice for them to keep hearing that. So with that, I will pass the baton to you, Irene.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And thank you to everyone. I want to also introduce Owen to me on my team, who I think most of you have received his email. And Owen just joined us from the Hill, so he can tell you. He is probably the person you would meet when you walked in the door. So a very friendly face, right? But I think, Joyce, you really gave a lot of your personal perspectives from your visits. And I think that's really helpful to people, because you've done these meetings, you know what's worked, what works better. So I think that's really helpful. And then, of course, Jordan, you really have prepared everyone substantively for the meetings. I guess I would just add a couple of things, because I did see a question in the chat. As I start off, Owen sent all of you an email, whether you're scheduling the meeting or waiting for a meeting to be scheduled. These last 2 weeks have been congressional recess, meaning that staff may be in, may be out. They're just a little bit slower and they come back next week. So I'm hoping they will respond to you, but I would feel free to email again on Monday. But if at least you have one request in, you can say you're following up on this request that you sent a couple of weeks ago, and they should feel a little bit bad about not getting back to you. So you do need to be persistent. You can imagine how many requests they get for meetings, especially for a member of Congress. And somebody asked, are we being supplied sample email? Yes, so you should have received that if you were registered. But if you did not get an email from Owen, then we should make sure that someone just asked a question, that you get that information, which has your member of Congress, a sample email, as well as a link to the biography of your member of Congress, to Joyce's point, knowing about your member of Congress. Also a map of Capitol Hill, things like that. So that email has a lot of information. So we'll just, you probably feel like you're bugging the scheduler and the office about meetings, but you have to be the squeaky wheel because, as I said, many people are asking for the same thing. But the important thing that your email should stand out because you are a constituent asking for a meeting with your member of Congress that you have elected and that works for you. So they should be responsive to you. We may at some point suggest making phone calls, but usually they like email. They would call, even if you called them, they'd say, send me an email. So, and to the, with members of Congress that we may have some personal relationships, we can try to help facilitate those meetings if you're continually being blocked. But if for whatever reason we can't schedule the meetings, now that the Hill is open, unlike in the last couple of years, you don't need to have people come down and get you when you come to the door. You can just go into the buildings, go through security. It's like the airport, except you can bring in drinks and food unless you're going into the Capitol. And you can drop by their office and say, hi, I'm Irene Bueno, and I'm your constituent. I've tried to schedule a meeting, but was unable to, but I'm here in DC, and I would like to speak to the member of Congress or someone on your staff about our issues. So, so that we call those drop-bys. And then maybe you'll meet with somebody, maybe you won't. And if you don't, you should just leave your materials, and we'll note that for future. And then just adding to some of the tips that Joyce gave, one thing that we mentioned on the first webinar is to arrive early, because as I said, a lot of other groups are doing their lobby days, especially in May, because it's a beautiful time of year and people want to be in DC before it gets too hot. So arrive early, because the security there can be a long line. What you may not know, there can be a couple of different doors you can enter in. So if one door has a long line, you might ask, is there another door we can enter the building? But that's why I said just arrive early. That way you avoid those kinds of situations. Wear comfortable shoes. The Hill is a hill, and you will be going from the House side to the Senate side. You can take a cab, but it's almost too short for a cab, but it is a bit of a walk, but it's a lovely walk. So you could always bring your sneakers, change your shoes. We do that all the time, so it's not a problem. Also be flexible. You may have scheduled a meeting with your member of Congress, your senator, and you're ready to meet with with them. And then suddenly they have to go vote or something. They have their hearings running late. They're just running late for whatever reason. And you have to meet with the housing legislative assistant or LA, or that person could be busy and suddenly you're meeting with the intern. And Joyce said, yeah, sometimes we are meeting in an office, but suddenly maybe the office is full and you're meeting in a coffee shop. Or sometimes you're meeting in the hallway. And even if you're meeting in the hallway, or in the hallway with an intern, I guess that's that's maybe the worst case scenario. Still imagine that you're meeting with the member of Congress, because the member of Congress can't meet with everyone. This intern or staffer is going to take that information and bring that to the member of Congress. So take it as seriously as you would be meeting with a member of Congress. So be flexible, keep a smile on your face. And one thing Joyce, I like how you talked about finding a common thread. I mean, one common thread you have with a member of Congress is that you're from the same district. Oh, where'd you go to high school? You're going to have a bunch of connections, right? So even just talking about stuff back home is just a common thread, and it reminds them that you are a constituent that could vote for them. You'll find a lot of staff though that aren't from the district, and that's fine too. But that's always an interesting way to kick off a conversation. Hey, are you from the district? Just to sort of be an icebreaker. But as Joyce said there, and Hope said, it is really conversational, and Owen can attest to this. That many times they're listening, right? They'll listen to your policy points. They might not have a lot of questions, and it could be because they handle 20 different issue areas, so they're not an expert on any of the policies that you're talking about. So they're just kind of taking in that information, then probably just nodding and thank you, and we'll take your paper and then leave. But don't feel like you're not being listened to. It's just they might not know about this issue, and that's why you're coming in to talk to them about it. I know we like to take pictures, which is fine, but of course I would ask first before you take pictures, but certainly it's great to take pictures. Sometimes you take it in their office with the flag and, different memorabilia, or outside their office with their, the nameplates, and other things. So it's, they really enjoy having constituents come into the office. So definitely feel relaxed that you're welcome there. I think, let me see if I'm just going to check to see if there are any other questions. Okay, I don't think there are. Did I miss anything? Hope, Joyce, Jordan, Owen?
There was one question about
Yeah.
scheduling and contact for the Senate. And just, since there are so many RA members from each state, we decided that we, NPG, would be handling the Senate side. And then we'll be releasing that information to you guys. We're actually doing it right now. So we're scheduling meetings with the Senate offices. And then as we get those scheduled, we'll be sharing the times and dates with all of you guys from each state.
Yeah, we just wanted to be careful. We don't want to annoy offices and have, 5 RA members from California contact the senator for the same meeting. So we thought it's easier for us just to schedule those meetings, since there are less senators and there are House members. So, and I think everyone has brought up, you have to make it personal to the extent that you can. I think that is what makes your meeting compelling and memorable, if you can connect it to a personal story, especially personal story connected to the district or the state. And then just a note about following up with an email saying thank you. You can also attach, because staff like to have things electronically. You can hand them the paper, which is fine, but you can say, I can also email this to you electronically, and they'll be very happy with that. So, but otherwise, it'll be great. It'll be fun. People, I think, get really energized after they do it. So, yeah, I think that's all I have. So thank you. But I'll be around. Owen will be around. We may even be on the Hill during those days that you'll be there. We could station ourselves in the Longworth cafeteria or in the Senate Dirksen cafe, so that if there's any questions or you've run out of 3-point plans, you can come by and see us.
Great. Thank you so much, Irene. Owen, thank you very much for shedding some light on the other spectrum for us. And Hope, Jordan, oh my gosh, we've got a really great team here. And of course, Jazz too, who is our graphic designer artist, who really put together a very nice piece for us to, as a leave behind, because, we also do want to have something that's eye-catching. So it's eye-catching. It doesn't have a whole lot of text in there that your eyes get blurred when you look at it. It's laid out really well. So thank you also to Jazz for your great design and work to make this a really eye-catching and memorable leave behind that we will have for our members of Congress. With that, I just want to express our appreciation for all of you taking time to be here today. We hope this was helpful. This is recorded, so it will be available, I believe, on YouTube, right? Jordan, is that where it's going to be sitting for us?
Yes.
Okay, so please feel free to even share this if you thought it was helpful to other members of your chapter, and to those who weren't able to make it today. Hopefully what we did share today will be helpful for them, because there's so many different things, and it's just from our perspective what has been and our suggestions. So there'll be other suggestions from your members from what was good for them and helpful too. So all this collectively is only going to make this a better experience for our members. So we're really excited to see you and look forward to taking our huge group picture to say, yay, we've accomplished this and we're not nervous anymore. And that was a great experience. So thank you all for joining, and we will see you next month. Have a great weekend coming up. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.